The flowers felt ridiculous in my hand, cellophane crinkling stupidly with every tremor. Bright yellow roses, Lisa's favorite. A peace offering, I guess. Or maybe just proof. Proof that I was trying. Because for weeks, months maybe, that's all I'd heard. Mark, you work too much. It started as a soft complaint, a sigh across the dinner table, the rare nights I actually made it home for dinner. We never see each other anymore, she'd say, her voice laced with that specific brand of disappointment that always twisted my gut. Then it escalated. Tears during phone calls. Accusations whispered late at night when I finally crawled into bed, exhausted. Is this job more important than me? Than us? God, the guilt. It was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest every time I stayed late, every time I had to take that weekend call. I'm Mark, by the way. 36, working in investment banking. Yeah, I know, the hours are brutal, but the payoff, well, it paid for this. This beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, her SUV, the vacations she loved, the comfortable life she seemed to crave. We'd been married 7 years. Met in college, whirlwind romance, picture-perfect wedding. Everyone thought we had it made. And I did too. Until the complaints started stacking up, becoming the constant background noise to our lives. I tried. I really did. I started saying no to optional projects, pushed back against unnecessary travel. I even took my name out of the running for a partner position I'd been working towards for years, telling myself it was for the marriage, for her. And still, it wasn't enough. Lately, it felt like the complaints intensified, became more pointed, more desperate. I'm just so lonely here all day, Mark, she'd weep. Maybe you should take that conference trip next month? At least one of us should get away. Strange, right? Pushing me away while complaining about my absence? But I dismissed it. Stress, I figured. Maybe she was depressed. Her phone became glued to her hand, always angled away from me. Quick swipes to close screens when I walked into the room. Just chatting with Sarah, she'd say vaguely. More girls' nights out than ever before, sometimes not getting home until the early hours. We just lost track of time, she'd explain, smelling faintly of wine and something else, something unfamiliar. I ignored the inconsistencies, the little prickles of unease. I was too tired, too consumed by guilt, too desperate to believe that if I just worked a little less, tried a little harder at home, everything would go back to the way it was. The perfect couple. Solid. Secure. So today I did it. The big project I'd been killing myself over. I pulled an all-nighter, delegated the final reporting, and got it done 12 hours ahead of schedule. 12 precious hours. My boss was stunned, told me to take the rest of the day, maybe even tomorrow. And all I could think was, Lisa, I'll surprise her. Show her I'm serious about changing. I practically ran out of the office, grabbed those stupidly expensive roses from the florist near the station, and drove home faster than I probably should have, a ridiculous, hopeful grin plastered on my face. I imagined her surprise, maybe a hug, maybe that rare, genuine smile I missed so much. Maybe we could order takeout, open a bottle of wine, actually talk. Yeah, naive doesn't even begin to cover it. Pulling into the driveway around 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, I noticed her car was there, which was normal. What wasn't normal was the front door being slightly ajar. Lisa was meticulous about locking doors. Always. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. Probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe the wind. Maybe she just stepped out to the garden. But the silence felt wrong. Too still. I pushed the door open wider, the hinges groaning slightly in the quiet house. Lisa, I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally loud. No answer. And then I saw them, placed neatly by the shoe rack, right next to Lisa's favorite running sneakers. Men's shoes. Definitely not mine. Expensive loafers, Italian leather by the look of them, a brand I recognized from some of the senior partners at my firm. My blood ran cold. Every excuse my brain tried to scramble for died instantly. Repairman? Delivery guy? No, not these shoes. Not placed so casually, so confidently, inside my house. The hopeful grin on my face felt like a grotesque mask. The flowers suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure dread. Then I heard it. A sound from upstairs. Our bedroom. Muffled laughter. A woman's laugh, Lisa's laugh, light and carefree in a way I hadn't heard in months. And then a deeper voice. A man's voice, murmuring something indistinct. I felt like I was moving through water, each step up the carpeted stairs taking an eternity. My breath hitched in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Not Lisa. Not my Lisa. We had problems, sure, but this? She wouldn't. She couldn't. The complaints about my work hours, the loneliness, was it all a lie? A manipulation? A way to ensure I was gone? The thought was so vile, so poisonous, it almost made me double over. I reached the top of the stairs, the bedroom door slightly closed but not latched. The voices were clearer now. Her giggling, his low chuckle. Bile rose in my throat. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Part of me screamed to turn around, to run, to pretend I hadn't seen, hadn't heard. But the part of me that had sacrificed sleep, ambition, and peace of mind for this woman needed to know, needed to see the truth, no matter how ugly. I pushed the door open. The scene burned itself onto my retinas in an instant of horrifying clarity. Lisa, my wife, wearing nothing but that silk robe I bought her for our anniversary, tangled in the sheets of our bed. And not alone. Hovering over her, equally undressed, was a man I vaguely recognized. Mark Jennings, a smarmy, overly tanned real estate developer we'd met at a charity gala a few months back. The one Lisa had described as a little creepy, but harmless. Harmless. Right. They froze, mid-laugh, their eyes snapping towards the door. Lisa's face went from flushed pleasure to chalky white horror in a split second. Jennings scrambled backward, eyes wide with panic, trying futilely to cover himself with a pillow. The yellow roses slipped from my numb fingers, scattering petals across the hallway carpet like mocking tears. The silence screamed. It stretched for an unbearable moment, filled only by the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears, a roaring tidal wave of shock, betrayal, and incandescent rage. Lisa finally found her voice, a strangled gasp. Mark, oh my God, what are you doing home? You're supposed to be at work. Supposed to be at work. The exact words. Not I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like. Just shock and anger that her carefully constructed schedule, the one built around my absence, had been disrupted. The mask of the grieving, lonely wife dissolved in that instant, revealing the cold, calculating manipulator underneath. She didn't just cheat. She orchestrated it. She used my dedication, my guilt, my love as tools to facilitate her affair. She wanted me gone. She complained I worked too much. It wasn't because she missed me. It was because my presence was inconvenient. My whole world, everything I thought I knew, everything I'd worked for, sacrificed for, imploded right there in the doorway of my own bedroom. And as I stared at the wreckage, a chilling, terrifying calm started to settle over the inferno of my emotions. She had no idea what she had just unleashed. The roaring in my ears subsided, replaced by a preternatural calm that felt colder and sharper than any shouting rage could have been. Lisa was stammering now, clutching the silk robe tighter, eyes darting between me and her lover boy, Jennings, who was frantically trying to pull on his ridiculously expensive-looking boxer shorts. Mark, baby, listen, it's a mistake. A horrible, terrible mistake. Her voice trembled, thick with faux tears I could suddenly see right through. The performance was almost impressive in its desperation. Mistake? Finding him in our bed at 3 p.m. on a weekday didn't seem like a slip-up. It screamed premeditation. It screamed arrangement. It screamed of countless hours stolen while I was grinding away at the office, feeling guilty for the very absence she was exploiting. Get dressed, I said. My voice came out flat, devoid of inflection. It seemed to shock them more than yelling would have. Lisa flinched. Jennings fumbled with his shirt buttons, his earlier panic now mixed with a healthy dose of fear as he looked at my face. He avoided my eyes. Coward. Both of you, I added, my gaze sweeping over them with utter contempt. And then he can leave. Jennings practically tripped over his own feet scrambling for his pants and those damn loafers I'd seen downstairs. He mumbled something incoherent, maybe an apology, maybe an excuse. I didn't care. I just stared at him, channeling every ounce of betrayed fury into that look until he couldn't gather his things fast enough. He scurried past me out the door, not daring to look back, leaving the lingering scent of his cheap cologne and Lisa's treachery hanging in the air. Good riddance. Now it was just us. The silence stretched again, heavy and suffocating. Lisa finally got her clothes on, pulling on jeans and a sweater, refusing to meet my eyes. The tears seemed more genuine now, Perhaps tears of fear, of realizing the game was truly up. "Mark, please," she whispered, taking a tentative step towards me. "Let me explain. You were never here. I was so lonely, so unhappy." He paid attention to me. There it was. The justification. The blame shift. Using my work, the very work that funded her comfortable existence, the work she relentlessly guilted me over, as the weapon against me. The sheer audacity, the twisted logic of it, fueled the icy resolve hardening within me. "Lonely," I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Was buying you that SUV helping your loneliness? The trip to Italy last year? This house? Were those things making you lonely, Lisa? Or was it just inconvenient having me around when you wanted to entertain guests?" She recoiled as if struck. "That's not fair." "Fair." My voice rose slightly, just a fraction, sharp and dangerous. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I skipped a promotion I earned because you cried about needing me home more? Is it fair I worked myself into the ground, feeling like scum because you weaponized my job against me, all while you were planning this? You didn't want me home more, Lisa. You just needed me out of the way. You needed guaranteed hours where this house was empty so you could screw around without getting caught." The accusation hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. Her face crumpled. The denials died on her lips. She knew I saw it. The whole ugly truth. "So what now?" she sobbed, sinking onto the edge of the perfectly made bed where she'd been with him moments before. "Are you going to leave me?" "Leave you?" I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that startled even myself. "No, Lisa. You are going to leave. Pack a bag. Whatever you need for tonight. Get out of my house." Her head snapped up, disbelief warring with panic in her eyes. "Your house? This is our house. You can't just kick me out, can I?" I replied, the coldness settling deep in my bones. "I believe my name is the only one on the deed. Funded by the job you seem to despise so much, yet benefit from so generously. You need to leave. Now." She stared at me, realizing I was dead serious. The tears turned to anger. "You selfish bastard. After everything, you think you can just throw me out?" She lunged towards me, maybe to hit me, maybe to plead. I don't know. I sidestepped easily, holding up a hand. "Don't touch me. Just pack." Her phone started ringing then, loudly, insistently, from her purse on the dresser. She ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally, frustrated, she snatched it up, glancing at the screen. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly before she quickly silenced it. But I saw the name for a split second. Jennings. He was calling her already? The sheer lack of shame, the continuation of their connection right under my nose, even now, it solidified everything. This wasn't a one-off mistake fueled by loneliness. This was an ongoing affair, planned, coordinated. I pulled out my own phone, my fingers surprisingly steady as I dialed. "Who are you calling?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "My lawyer," I said calmly, putting the phone to my ear as it started to ring on the other end. Lisa's face went ashen. "Mark, no. Don't. We can talk about this. We don't need lawyers." But it was too late. David, my college buddy turned shark of a divorce attorney, picked up on the second ring. "David," I said, my voice level. "It's Mark." "Yeah, I'm okay. Listen. I need you. It's Lisa. It's worse than we thought." I kept my eyes locked on Lisa's horrified face as I laid out the bare minimum to David, scheduling an emergency meeting for the next morning. When I hung up, Lisa was white-faced, trembling. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by a dawning terror. She knew David, knew his reputation. This wasn't going to be an amicable split. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did. Now pack." She finally moved then, robotically pulling a suitcase from the closet, throwing clothes in haphazardly, tears silently streaming down her face. There were no more accusations, no more pleading. Just the quiet sounds of drawers opening and closing, the rustle of fabric. I watched her, not feeling pity, not feeling sadness, just a vast, chilling emptiness where 7 years of marriage used to be. And beneath that emptiness, something else was stirring. A cold, methodical anger. A need for, not revenge, exactly. Justice. Accountability. She had built this charade on my hard work, my guilt, my absence. She'd manipulated me, lied to me, betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. Simply letting her walk away felt insufficient. As she zipped the suitcase shut, avoiding my gaze, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan to dismantle the comfortable life she took for granted, the life built on the foundation of my too much work. She wanted me gone? Fine. But she was about to find out what it truly meant to have nothing left. The evidence wasn't just the scene I walked in on. It was years of her calculated complaints, her manufactured loneliness. And I was going to use every bit of it. This wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of her reckoning. The days following Lisa's departure were a blur of grim efficiency. The house felt simultaneously too big and suffocatingly small, every room echoing with the ghost of her betrayal. But I didn't let the grief paralyze me. That cold anger, that need for accountability, became my fuel. My meeting with David, my lawyer, was brutally productive. I laid everything out, the years of complaints about my work hours escalating just as, I now suspected, the affair began, the specific incidents of manipulation, the scene I walked in on, Jennings' name, the immediate phone call from him after he fled. David listened intently, his expression hardening. "Mark, this isn't just infidelity," he said, leaning forward. "This is calculated deception, using your career and your resulting guilt as a tool to facilitate the affair. Her documented complaints about your work contrasted with her obvious enjoyment of the lifestyle it provided, and now this, it paints a very ugly picture for her. We can leverage this. Hard. And leverage it. We did. First, the financials. We moved quickly to secure assets. Since the house was solely in my name and purchased before the significant escalation of her loneliness campaign, David was confident about protecting it. Joint accounts were frozen, leaving her access only to a small personal account she rarely used. Credit cards where she was an authorized user were canceled immediately. I changed all the locks, installed a security system with cameras, discreetly, but covering all entry points. Evidence was crucial. I meticulously documented everything I could remember, dates of specific complaints, times she'd urged me to travel or stay late, coinciding girls' nights. I even pulled old phone records from our family plan, highlighting the sudden spike in calls and texts to an unknown number. Jennings' number, David confirmed through a quick search, starting around 6 months ago. The pattern was damning. Lisa, meanwhile, was alternating between frantic voicemails filled with tearful apologies and venomous texts demanding money, threatening to tell everyone how I'd cruelly thrown her out. I ignored them all, instructing her via a single, curt email that all communication must go through our lawyers. That silence, that wall, seemed to infuriate and terrify her more than any argument would have. The first major salvo was serving the divorce papers. We didn't just mail them. David arranged for a process server to deliver them to her while she was having lunch with her mother at a rather upscale restaurant they frequented, a place she loved to be seen. According to the server's report, the scene was dramatic. Lisa apparently caused quite a disturbance, tears, shouting, the works. Her mother looked mortified. The carefully curated image of the wronged, suffering wife began to crumble under public scrutiny. The papers themselves were brutal, outlining the grounds for divorce based on adultery, citing specific evidence of the calculated deception regarding my work schedule, and making it clear we would be seeking a highly disproportionate division of assets in my favor, arguing that her actions constituted extreme emotional cruelty and financial dissipation, likely spending joint funds, even indirectly, on the affair. We also included a restraining order petition, citing her increasingly erratic calls and texts, preventing her from contacting me directly or coming near the house or my workplace. The reaction was immediate. Her lawyer, some slick guy probably recommended by Jennings, contacted David, blustering about unreasonable demands and character assassination. Lisa herself somehow got a message through via her sister, pleading for me to be reasonable, claiming she was destitute, that I was trying to ruin her life. Ruin her life? She'd done a spectacular job of that all on her own. The next step was exposing the truth carefully. I didn't blast it on social media, that wasn't my style. But I did have quiet conversations with my parents, my siblings, and a couple of very close, trusted friends who had witnessed Lisa's complaints firsthand over the years. I presented the facts calmly, the discovery, the timeline, the clear evidence that her loneliness was a lie designed to get me out of the house. The reactions ranged from shock and sadness to righteous anger on my behalf. Crucially, it inoculated me against her inevitable victim narrative. When Lisa tried spinning tales of my workaholism driving her away, my friends and family knew the real, ugly story. Even her own sister, after hearing a more detailed account from my sister-in-law, reportedly started distancing herself. The peak confrontation came during the mandatory mediation session. Lisa arrived looking pale and thin, shadows under her eyes, but with a defiant tilt to her chin. Jennings was nowhere in sight. Apparently, according to David's discreet inquiries, he'd completely ghosted her once the legal trouble started and his own wife. Yes, he was married too, surprise, surprise, got wind of the affair. So much for eternal devotion. Lisa sat across the table, flanked by her lawyer, while I sat with David. Her lawyer started with a weak attempt at portraying her as the emotionally neglected wife who made a mistake under duress. David calmly dismantled it, piece by piece, referencing the timeline, the phone records, the financial statements showing her lavish spending funded by my neglected work, and finally, the sworn affidavit from the process server about her public meltdown. He then laid out our settlement offer. She would walk away with her personal belongings, the car, which was leased and nearly up anyway, and a minimal, short-term alimony payment, far less than standard guidelines, citing her egregious conduct. In return, she would relinquish all claims to the house, retirement accounts, and any other significant assets. Lisa listened, her face growing increasingly horrified. When David finished, she exploded. "This is insane. He's trying to leave me with nothing. After 7 years. He owes me. That house is half mine." Her lawyer tried to quiet her, but she was beyond reason. He was never home. He chose his job over me. I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere if he'd just paid attention. It was the same old broken record. David let her rant for a moment, then quietly slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a summary list, dates and times, cross-referencing her major complaints about my work hours with significant purchases she'd made or trips she'd taken shortly thereafter, funded by bonuses or income directly related to the very work she decried. And at the bottom, highlighted, were the dates and times I came home early, wanting to surprise her, only to find her out with friends or running errands, dates that coincided with call logs to Jennings. Lisa stared at the paper, her face contorting with rage, then slowly crumpling into utter despair. The fight drained out of her completely. She saw it all laid out, the hypocrisy, the calculation, the irrefutable proof. She had nothing left to argue. Her lawyer, seeing the game was lost, quickly advised her to take the deal. She sat there, silent for a long moment, tears rolling down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity, of realizing the gravy train had ended, that the comfortable life she'd felt entitled to, the life she simultaneously scorned and exploited, was gone. Forever. She finally nodded, a barely perceptible movement, unable to speak. "Sign here," David said, pushing the settlement agreement towards her. Her hand shook as she signed away the life she had systematically destroyed. As we stood up to leave, she looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and desperate pleading. "Mark, why? Why are you doing this to me?" I met her gaze, feeling nothing but a cold finality. "You did this to yourself, Lisa. You complained I worked too much. You just needed me gone. Well, you got your wish. You're free. And I'm free of you. These," I gestured vaguely towards the signed papers, "are just the terms of that freedom." I turned and walked out of the room without looking back, David beside me. The legal battle was effectively over. She was left adrift, stripped of the assets, the lifestyle, and the husband she betrayed. The sense of relief was immense, heavier, and more profound than I could have imagined. The chapter was closed. Brutally, perhaps, but necessarily. 2 years. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all since that mediation room, since the finality of Lisa's signature on the divorce settlement. The immediate aftermath wasn't easy. I won't pretend it was. There was an adjustment period, learning to navigate the silence in the house, processing the sheer depth of the betrayal, rebuilding trust, not just in others, but in my own judgment. How could I have missed so many signs? How could I have allowed myself to be manipulated by guilt for so long? Therapy was invaluable. It helped me unpack the complex emotions, the anger, the grief, the misplaced guilt, and understand that Lisa's choices were about her character, her flaws, not mine. Her complaints about my work weren't a reflection of my inadequacy as a husband. They were a smokescreen for her own infidelity and dissatisfaction, a convenient excuse she wielded masterfully. Understanding that distinction was crucial for healing. Life without Lisa gradually became better. Quieter, at first, but more peaceful. I did make changes at work, but on my own terms. I realized I had been letting the job consume me, partly because I was avoiding the growing chill at home, partly because I genuinely enjoyed the challenge. I learned to set boundaries, delegate more effectively, prioritize my well-being. I didn't quit finance, but I found a better balance, reclaiming my evenings and weekends not out of guilt, but because I wanted to. I reconnected with hobbies I'd abandoned, started working out regularly, traveled to places I wanted to see. The house, once a painful reminder, slowly started to feel like my sanctuary again, filled with my things, my peace, my rules. I filled the space not with frantic activity, but with a sense of calm purpose. What became of Lisa? I didn't seek out information, but news travels, especially in interconnected social circles. The picture wasn't pretty. Stripped of the lifestyle she was accustomed to, and with her reputation in tatters among anyone who knew the real story, she struggled significantly. The minimal alimony ran out quickly. She apparently bounced between temporary jobs, unable to hold anything down for long, blaming sexism, bad bosses, bad luck, everything but her own actions. The affair with Jennings imploded spectacularly, leaving him fighting to save his own marriage and career, wanting nothing more to do with her. Last I heard, through a mutual acquaintance who bumped into her, she was living in a cramped apartment in a less desirable part of town, looking worn down and perpetually aggrieved, still complaining about how unfairly life, and specifically I, had treated her. There was apparently a brief, awkward attempt where she asked the acquaintance to pass on a message, something about wanting to apologize for everything, but it felt hollow. Another angle. I never received the message directly and wouldn't have responded if I had. She chose her path. The consequences were hers to live with. As for me, the healing process led to unexpected growth. Rebuilding my life from the ground up forced me to confront my own priorities, my own values. I learned the importance of trusting my gut, of recognizing red flags, like someone constantly making you feel guilty for the very things that support your shared life. About 6 months ago, I started dating again, cautiously at first. I met someone, Anna. She's a graphic designer, creative, independent, refreshingly direct. There's no drama, no manipulation, just open communication and mutual respect. It's easy in the best possible way. We're taking things slow, but it feels healthy, genuine. Whether it leads to something long-term or not, it's shown me that healthy relationships exist, that trust is possible after betrayal. It's also shown me that my capacity for happiness wasn't destroyed by Lisa. It was merely overshadowed. Looking back at the whole ordeal, the irony is still stark. Lisa said I worked too much, that my job was the problem. But my work ethic, the very thing she resented and weaponized, was what provided the stability she craved and ultimately gave me the resources and the strength to extract myself from her toxic orbit. Her betrayal didn't stem from my long hours. It stemmed from her own character, her own choices. The long hours were just her convenient scapegoat, her cover story. The pain of that discovery was immense, world-shattering at the time. But walking through that fire forged something stronger within me. I learned that my worth isn't tied to someone else's approval or dependent on sacrificing myself on the altar of their demands. Surviving Lisa, surviving the calculated cruelty of her wanting me gone just so she could be with her lover, taught me resilience I never knew I possessed. The scars are there, faint reminders under the surface, but they no longer ache. They just signify a battle fought, a hard lesson learned, and a future reclaimed. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly hope to see you again for more fascinating tales ahead. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next adventure. See you soon.